10 Things New Managers Need to Know has recently become my most popular article ever on Forbes.com. And so I thought we would take a couple minutes, resurrect this oldie but goodie, and glean that advice for people taking on those people manager roles in 2020. But before we do that, two quick things. Number one, if you like these videos, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel or giving them a thumbs up or leave a comment or share them on your social media with your friends, family members, colleagues, whoever might find it helpful. Listen, I'm trying really hard to post new content, at least one new video every single day during the work week. I'm taking Saturdays and Sundays off because I need my work-life balance too. But if you subscribe, like, share, all those good things, you're going to let me know you appreciate what I'm doing. And if I get enough good feedback, heck, I might keep doing it. The other announcement that I want to make is, listen, I have got a couple free webinars coming up in the next couple of weeks, and they are specific to people managers, organizational leaders, maybe HR folks, maybe training and development, people that are in charge of building effective teams in organizations. The first one is on February 13th. It's called Manager Mastery, the Ultimate Manager Training Program. I'm going to review the 4 key components of my manager training program that's been shown to increase productivity on teams that listen to the advice I give them up to 30%. The other free webinar is on February 26th, and this is going to be all about how to run a highly effective team building workshop using different sorts of assessments so you can really zone in on where the team's problems areas are, get really specific about actionable strategies to make those improvements. These are both completely free. If you are not available for the live webinar to be able to ask questions and engage in the group, don't worry, register anyway, and what's going to happen is you're going to get a recording pretty close to when I finish the webinar, so you're going to be able to watch it on your own time. For more information about that, you can head over to zenworkplace.com. They're actually right on the homepage, so that's what you're going to see when you hit the homepage, and just scroll down a little bit. It's going to take you right to the links to register. But let's dig into our article and look at some advice for new managers. You've finally done it. After years of hard work, you've been promoted to a position managing a team of people and can call the shots. Your first job as a manager can be exciting and also a bit overwhelming, and it's important to do it well. Managers are the cultural linchpin in the organization. They set the tone for the work experience. The rest of the organization could be fantastic, but if your boss isn't up to snuff, that will cloud all of the good things happening. There's a reason that people say you don't quit your job, you quit your boss. And listen, there's another statistic around people managers that I really love. I don't remember if I posted it in the article, but I'll share it with you right now. As many as 65% of people would choose to fire their boss over getting a pay raise. They would choose to get rid of their boss over putting more money in their pocket. Please keep these things in mind. It is important to be a good boss. You're taking on that extra responsibility. Listen, let's talk about number one, because that goes to the point I just made. Being a manager is not an elevated version of being an individual contributor. I was once coaching a new manager who told me, well, I've got to play the game that brought me here. And I replied, you were playing basketball before, but you're playing football now. It is a fundamentally different game. Playing by the rules of the old game instead of adapting the rules to the new game just sets you and your team up for failure. Listen, you likely made it to a manager position because you proved you could be successful at the job you were doing as an individual contributor, not because you successfully proved your ability to manage a group of individual contributors. These are two different things. Just like you can't wake up one day and play a concerto on the piano if you've never played before, you probably won't wake up and automatically know what to do to be the world's best boss. It's a skill that must be developed in its own right, just like any other skill. So listen, I'm going to break from the article here for a second. It can be intimidating to start off as a new manager. And what I want you to hear is that if you're in that position, every single person that's been there before you, if they had any sense about them, have been intimidated by it. They haven't known what to do. Maybe they feel overwhelmed at times. That's okay. That is part of the challenge when we take on those new responsibilities. If you're feeling those things, then you are exactly in the right place. So consider yourself an apprentice. This is the time to learn how to effectively step into the leadership role that your team needs you to take, how to effectively delegate, and how to inspire your team to put in their very best every single day. If you make a mistake or two along the way, just own it. Take responsibility for it, guys. Your team knows, you know. You're going to develop so much more trust if you just take responsibility. If you mess up every once in a while, you're human. It's okay. So own it and then promise to do better. Number 2, adaptation is your magic bullet. If you want your people to be highly productive, motivated, creative, and innovative, then you need to learn how to adapt your work style to theirs. I cannot emphasize how critical adaptation is. Adaptation, if you're thinking about coming to that free webinar on the 13th, adaptation is actually the very first component of my manager training program. It infuses every other part of the program. To learn more about your management style, the work styles that exist on your team, how you're the same, how you're different, and what you need to do to be an effective boss. It is so critical. Everyone you're managing will bring a different natural work style to the office, which means that they all have different things that are going to inspire them and motivate them or hold them back from doing their best work. Sometimes you get lucky and you have employees who have very similar working styles as you, and you just gel immediately, kind of like peanut butter and jelly, right? But more often, the opposite is true. You end up with those employees who just approach work differently. You must keep in mind that different is not necessarily bad or wrong. Each work style has its own set of strengths and challenges, and no work style is fundamentally better or worse than any other. In an ideal world, we would all understand the work styles of our colleagues and proactively adapt to meet someone in the middle. However, most of the time, someone needs to take that first step. Someone needs to be the one, particularly when you have work styles that are going like this, to take that first step and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to change my approach for the good of the order. And guess what? As a manager, that's your job. You are the one in the power position, and if your goal, as it should be, is to support your team in performing at their highest level, you have to work to understand their needs and adapt your work style to them. Remember, when you're successful or when they're successful, you're successful. And this is a mistake a lot of managers make because they think like, I'm the boss. I get to call the shots. People have to listen to what I say, and then I can approach it in any way I want, and they still have to listen to me. A lot of us have had really bad bosses as role models. Really bad bosses who kind of barked orders or didn't do anything to motivate us or inspire us or any of those things. If you have not liked that in previous bosses that you have had, then why would you be that type of boss for your team? And I know you probably don't want to be that boss for your team. I get it, man. But that's why learning about your work style is so important. If you end up enrolling in my manager training program at one time, one of the very first things we do is to do a work style assessment. So you would get a big 20-page report all about your individual work style. What you do well, what you don't do so well, how you manage, how you delegate, how you can inspire people, all these different things. That's a critical piece of information for you to be able to be the very best boss you can be. Number 3, people like structure and guidance. Zappos made headlines several years ago when they restructured to a holacracy and effectively eliminated manager positions. The result? 18% of their workforce left the company. A huge turnover rate by any standard. And I'm just going to interject here to say that 2020 is going to be the year of employee turnover. Mark my words, all the data that I'm seeing is pointing to a year that this is when people are going to leave their jobs. I did a video the other day about how up to 64% of employees may be job hopping in 2020. So if you don't have it together when it comes to some of these principles, now's the time to get it together. Because if they don't have a good experience working for you, they're jumping ship, and employee turnover is hugely costly to organizations. It costs anywhere between 30%, and 150% of someone's annual salary. When an employee leaves their position, it depends on a variety of factors. I'm not going to go into that here, but what you need to know is that you don't want them to leave. You want to create an environment where they feel supported and ready to do their best work. The idea of getting rid of managers and allowing lower level employees to become more entrepreneurial sounds great, but it rarely works in practice because from a psychological perspective, most people seek out structure and guidance. We've been trained to do this from the time we were small children. We look to our parents, our teachers, our extended family, our friends to know what to do and what not to do. When you enter into the workforce, you can't just turn off that 20 years of programming. People want ongoing feedback. And someone has to be in charge of providing that guidance and saying it's everyone's responsibility to do it. I'm sorry, it's just not good enough. It's not good enough to say that. When something is everyone's responsibility, it's really no one's responsibility. This is a line, by the way, that I learned from one of the best bosses I ever have. I've totally cribbed it from her. She was actually one of the only managers that I ever had that was a really good boss. And she said this all the time. When something is everyone's responsibility, it is really no one's responsibility. So it rests on managers to do it. And in fact, 65% of people say they want more feedback from their boss than they're currently getting, even in very traditional management structures. As a manager, your job is to provide the structure and guidance your team members need to do their best work on an ongoing basis. Number 4, but people will sink under too much structure and guidance. So what we're trying to do here is find that balance. How much structure is enough while not providing too much? All that being said, from the last point, it's important to know that managers need to walk the tightrope between providing guidance and micromanagement. Here are some critical differences between effective managers and micromanagers. Effective managers lead through influence, micromanagers lead through control. Effective managers know that experience and the occasional failure is the only way to learn, grow, and push beyond business as usual. Micromanagers fear failure of any kind, no matter how small or insignificant. Effective managers ask questions to guide their team members towards a solution. Micromanagers dictate a solution without exploring different options or opportunities. Effective managers empower their team members to do their best work on their own as long as they provide updates and ask for help when needed. Micromanagers need to be involved in every meeting and CC'd on every email. Effective managers keep their cards face up at all times. They share information openly and transparently. Micromanagers keep their cards very close to their chest, even as if they are in competition with people that they're working with. And lastly, effective managers remain open to new ideas, willing to explore them if they're reasonable, whereas micromanagers default to doing things the way they've always been done before. Managers get a bad reputation because of all the micromanagers out there who refuse to let go of control and empower their employees to succeed on their own. But remember, that is your job to delegate because that is the only way for your team members to learn and grow. Listen, one of the most common questions I'm asked by managers, Carlin, how do I just get people to do what I want them to do without me having to tell them what to do or guide them every step of the way? I want them to feel empowered in their role. You have to have an honest conversation with yourself. If your team members don't feel empowered, it's because on some level, they either doubt their abilities, in which case they need to be coached to have more confidence in their abilities. They need to be shown that they can actually do it. But the other thing that might be happening is you're exerting more kind of micromanaging control over your employees than you think they are. They think in a very real way that you haven't given them permission to make those decisions on their own. You have to make it very, very clear to them what decisions they can make without coming to you. That's part of the process. And listen, yes, they're probably going to make mistakes. Yes, they're probably going to do things in a different way than you would do them, but that has to be okay. That's part of the process of how people learn. Number 5, let your people lead in their area, even if you don't always agree with where they're going. If you want your employees to be empowered to do their best work, that requires taking a step back. Remember that your role is to provide guidance, and you can do that by asking questions to make sure that your team member has fully considered their approach. But if their ideas are different than the way you would have done it, most of the time the best way is to let them go and try what they want to do and see what happens. There's always more than one way to meet a goal, and very few of us work in jobs that are truly life and death. If they fail, it's a teaching moment and an opportunity to iterate. I'm not sure, there's a typo there. I gotta go back in and fix that. I'm not sure what the heck happened there. And if they succeed using a strategy you wouldn't have picked, then listen, it's still a win for you. Okay? So the moral of the story here is that, listen, sometimes your employees are going to have different strategies. Let them go and try it. Allow yourself to be surprised at the strategies that work that maybe you wouldn't have considered. That's a really good thing. If they have a success and maybe it doesn't come directly from you, that is an indication that they are empowered. It might make you feel a little uneasy because you're like, I'm the boss, I should be controlling this, but listen, just relax. If things are going well and people are meeting goals, then is it really important that they used your way to get there? Probably not. Number 6, schedule regular, consistent, frequent one-on-one meetings. Very few people want more meetings in their lives, but for managers, a weekly one-on-one meeting with every direct report is an absolute must. Yes, I said weekly. I said weekly. In the same report that gave us the data that 64% of employees may leave their jobs in 2020, we also learned that only something like 30%, I think, of managers are having weekly one-on-one meetings with their employees. Guys, anything beyond weekly simply isn't good enough. Think about it. If you can't give each of your direct reports 30 minutes of your time every week, then you either have too many people reporting to you and need to add more hierarchy, or you haven't fully embraced your role as a manager rather than as an individual contributor. In those one-on-one meetings, you want to hit on 3 things: an update of the things they're working on and what they need help from you to succeed, your update of all the information they need to know and to do their job well, a quick brainstorm of future goals, ideas they have, and development they might need. This is also a great place to integrate coaching into your one-on-one meetings. More on that one in a second. Frequently, one-on-one meetings are the first meeting to be canceled with the excuse of, I have nothing to talk about. What have you been doing all week, guys? Listen, I mean this, what have you been doing all week if you say you have nothing to talk about in your one-on-one meeting? These meetings are so critical, even if it's just an update of information, even if it's just, it seems like you're covering mundane things. Consistency in these meetings is actually one of the most critical elements. Even if you have nothing exciting to discuss, you can still review what's been done since our last meeting. What productivity have they made? What progress have they made? What wins have they had? What are they proud of? What obstacles they're encountering? What's going on in the organization that they need to know about? What you might need from them? A heads up on any upcoming projects? I could go on and on and on of different things you can talk about in these one-on-one weekly meetings, even if nothing exciting has happened. You have to have these consistent check-ins. Now, this last point, let me be blunt. Unless you have fallen down the stairs and have a bone sticking out of your leg, you should not cancel your one-on-one meetings. This FaceTime is a critical component of building a relationship with each of your employees that is grounded in trust. It's one of the most important things you as a boss can do to drive their success. Really, really important. If you listen to none of my other advice from this article, schedule one-on-one weekly meetings with every single person that reports to you. Number 7, listen actively and default to trust. When you have your sacrosanct, we're not going to cancel them ever unless there's an emergency, weekly one-on-one meeting, the most critical component is not what you have to say. It's what your team members are contributing. You're going to hear the good and the bad because that's what happens when you have open, transparent communication. And it is essential that you hear your employees out and always assume they are coming to you with the best possible intent, even if they're complaining about problems. Because if they're complaining about problems, that means they want your help in solving them. If your boss approaches you from the vein of distrust when you're making a good faith effort to do the right thing, that can be incredibly demotivating. Your goal should always be to have them leave that one-on-one meeting in a better, more empowered place than when they arrive. Listen carefully for what they're asking for, read between the lines to get to what is at the core of what they're looking for or what's going on, and then do your best to provide the support they are looking for. Number 8, never give critical feedback based on someone's emotions. Instead, you have to focus on behavior and impact. Okay? I once had a conversation with a former boss. I'm gonna act this one out. I think I've done this one in a video before, but we'll do it again. So I'm in her office and she's sitting across the table from me. She's looking at me like this. Like big old puss on her face, man. And she says, "You're obviously angry." And I really wasn't. This is actually legit. I really wasn't angry. And so I responded like, "No, I'm not. I'm frustrated with a few things, but I'm not angry." And then she goes, "No, you're obviously angry." And I go, "No, I'm really not." And then she says, "I disagree." And just looks at me like this. And I said, "Look, I wasn't angry before, but now you're actually starting to piss me off." And, granted, maybe I stepped across the line a little bit on that one. I wasn't at that job too much longer. I don't really regret it because she was in the wrong. She was absolutely in the wrong to do that. Needless to say, my old boss didn't follow many of these tips. You'll never eliminate the role of emotions in the workplace, but that doesn't mean that it is your responsibility to provide commentary on what other people are thinking and experiencing. And just to jump away from the article for a second, listen, most of the time when we perceive emotions in other people, we are projecting our own junk onto them. Something's going on with us. It's making us feel a certain way. We don't want to acknowledge that that's what's going on with us. So we put it on another person. So when my old boss was like, "You're obviously angry," well, she was projecting her anger onto me. I was not angry. I knew I wasn't angry, but she obviously was because she was visibly upset. And I understand the irony of just putting emotions on my boss that I'm not a mind reader too, but I think she was projecting. I would bet all the money in my wallet that she was projecting. Ultimately, people can think or feel anything they like as long as they are showing up and doing what they need to do in order to achieve their goals. So listen, I could have been angry, but it is not my old boss's job to provide commentary on that. And it's not your job either. As long as people are showing up, they're working well with their colleagues, they're doing what they need to do, they're meeting their goals, and they can think whatever they want. Who cares? That's why it's critical to focus on things you can see when you are giving out critical feedback. Your goal when you're giving out critical feedback, and by the way, critical feedback comes when people are doing something and you fundamentally want them to do something differently, right? They're behaving one way, you want them to get them to behave another way. So our goal here is to change someone's behavior. It's not to change their thought process, it's to change their outward behavior, to get them to stop doing something that isn't effective and go down a different path. To do that, you have to be crystal clear about what they're doing and why it's important to change. So the formula that I really like for this is behavior plus impact plus expectation. You state the problematic behavior and explain why it's a problem, and set the expectation for future behavior. So, for example, when you come in late to the staff meeting, which is a behavior, you throw off the agenda and it takes 10 minutes longer than it needs to, which is the impact of the behavior. Please make it on time in the future, which is a future expectation. All right, so do you understand that? We say the behavior that we don't like, we discuss the impact of the behavior, and we set a future expectation. So I'm just going to read this one more time so it's clear. When you come in late to the staff meeting, you throw off the agenda and it takes us 10 minutes longer to finish than it needs to. Please make it a point to come on time in the future. See, you're going through 3 components, but it doesn't really take that long. And once you learn the formula and you apply it a couple times, it's actually really easy. Behavior, impact, expectation. And then to the next point, you can thank them and provide future positive feedback when they meet that expectation. And by the way, this is a formula you can use for positive feedback as well. When you show up on time, that means that we're able to kick off the meeting on time and we're able to keep everything in within half an hour. Thank you. It really helps out. Okay? So you can apply it in both ways. Number 9, be unapologetically optimistic. The above example explains how to give critical feedback well, but the reality is that you should give out much more positive feedback than negative feedback for one simple reason. Positive feedback is significantly more motivating than critical feedback. In fact, every single business outcome that we can test for goes up when the brain is in a state of positivity. And the fact is that most employees are doing most things right on any given day, but they only get feedback when they're doing something wrong. The way you give feedback sets the tone for your management style. If you're consistently looking for reasons to offer praise, even with the little things, that will keep your team in the right headspace for them to be their best and do their best work. And number 10, your job is to make people successful. At the end of the day, you will be judged as a boss based on the success of your team, and that means that they are your first priority. The minute you start deviating from that path is the minute you wander into bad boss territory. It might be helpful to do quick exercises at the end of every day and make a list of the ways that you set your employees up for success that day. It will help you to take stock, hold yourself accountable, and make sure you are focusing on the things that matter most. All right, so those are my top 10 tips for new managers. If you have an additional tip that you'd like to add to the list, go ahead, leave a comment. I do actually make updates to this list every now and again when I get, new ideas, or I think that something has just become much more prevalent in the workspace that we need to make sure people address. So I would love your ideas, love your feedback. What did I get right? What did you like? What's missing that I should consider adding? Go ahead, leave a comment, and let me know what you think. And I really hope I see you at one of these, or maybe even both of them, both of these 2 free webinars that I've got coming up in the next couple of weeks. Remember, head over to zenworkplace.com to register today.